Welcome to Gavels Down, Voices Up with me, Rachel King. This is where we leave convention at the courtroom door and dive into your real stories, bold and unpopular opinions, and change-making ideas that really shake the legal world up and change where change is desperately needed. I'm here to shake it up, talk about unfiltered insights, and amplify voices that need to be heard. So are you ready? Let's get it. Put the gavels down and the voices up. My name's Rachel King, and we're doing a special episode, super short and sweet, on the roadmaps for a breakup. We all have broken up, and they can be really overwhelming, especially when you're dealing with all of the emotional stuff that goes through with a relationship that you probably didn't envision failing. So here's some real quick steps to handle your breakup. 1, are you married or are you not married? Because you can break up when you're married, but you can also break up when you're not married. In fact, I'd be willing to bet that more people break up not married than do married. But whether you are married or not married, first step makes a big difference because there's different laws if you're going through a divorce versus if you are breaking up in an unmarried situation. Or maybe you're in a domestic partnership, right? But figuring out what kind of relationship you have is crucial from the outset because that will decide which way you go. Second thing, do you have children or no minor children, right? Adult children, yeah, you might have had them, you might have raised them, they might be off doing their own thing. But if they're adults, then they're not really involved in the breakup, at least not legally. So first, are you married or are you not married? Second, do you have children, minor children, or do you not have minor children? Maybe no kids or adult kids. Then, third step, listing out all of your assets and debts. And yes, this is important even if you're not married, right? No matter what, if you are breaking up, go through and list your assets. Was the house purchased? Did you contribute to retirement? Who bought the television? What assets do you guys have? Bank accounts. Why? Well, if you're married, it's going to be important because the marital laws will come into play. Maybe you have a right to half of everything, or your spouse has a right to an equal share. Maybe something that you own is your separate property, or there was an inheritance that your spouse got. But also important is the assets that you bought when you are not married. Why? Because you probably made some kind of decisions through this relationship, especially if it was a long one that went on for 10, 15, 20 years. Those breakups still happen too. Now, how was that house owned? Did you make any financial contributions to it? Just because you don't fall into the marital laws doesn't necessarily mean you don't have a right to those assets, right? If the house is only in your ex's name or soon to be ex's name, but you pulled out 45 grand from your 401k and contributed to it, that's important. You may have a right to get it back even if you're not married. Let's talk about that credit card that's in your name. If you're married, it matters because debts are typically divided. But even if you're not married, if you started charging all of your soon-to-be ex's student loans on your credit card, you might be able to recover for it. So figuring out what assets and what debts you have, super important. Now that we know whether you're married or not married, whether there's minor children or no kids, and what assets and debts you have, and they have as well, right? You want to do both people. Then you're going to look at what your legal obligations are. And this, again, comes into play looking at everything. If you are not married, you'll have different legal obligations with those assets and debts than if you are married. If you have children, there will be different legal obligations than if there's no children. If you have no kids, then we know that there's no child support obligation, right? Married or unmarried. If you have adult children, maybe the same thing. So finding out what your legal obligations are to your soon-to-be, or maybe just your ex. And then what are your next steps going to be? Yeah, you're going to go talk to all your friends and have your support system in place, but figuring out what your next step is going to be, arguably the most important step. And now for a quick break.
This episode of Gavels Down, Voices Up is proudly brought to you by King Law Firm Attorneys at Law Incorporated. We're not just about winning cases, we're about making a difference. Whether it's family law, probate litigation, or standing up against elder abuse, we bring experience, empathy, and excellence to the courtroom. At King Law Firm, we're more than lawyers. We're your team, in your corner, advocating for your rights and making your voice heard. Visit us at thelawyerking.com and on the socials at The Lawyer King to see how we fight with you and for you. King Law Firm Attorneys at Law Incorporated, where your fight becomes our fight. Now, let's get back to today's episode.
Maybe you're on a joint lease, but you can't afford it and you don't want to live with your ex anymore. So what is your next step going to be? Are you going to be able to get your own place? Are you going to go live with family or friends? Maybe you guys have lived together for such a long time and you were the stay-at-home parent and you don't really have a career. What does that look like for you? Financially, how is it going to play out? Do you have to get a job? Is there savings? Are you entitled to half of the assets because you are married and so maybe you can afford to go get your own place? Maybe you aren't married and it was very short term and you were kind of living off of your ex's financial situation, which, okay, cool, but that doesn't help your next step. So short and sweet. If you're going through a breakup, you want to figure out, 1, if you're married or not married. 2, do you have kids or do you not have kids with this person? Hopefully those 2 questions are super easy. You can answer them in your head. Then you're going to want to go through and list out all of your assets, all of their assets, all of your debts, and all of their debts. And it might be a good idea to put down whose name each one of them is. Is it joint? Is it individual? Second to last, we're going to look at what your legal obligations are. What do you have to do, if anything? And lastly, figure out your next steps. What is the next move for you? The roadmap to a breakup, it's tough. But if you have a plan, you will get through it. And hopefully, you'll end up better after the breakup than you were when you were going through that tremulous time right before the breakup happened. My name's Rachel King. Until next time, Gavels Down, Voices Up. Thanks for tuning in to Gavels Down, Voices Up. Like what you heard? Then don't just sit there. Subscribe, share, and tell me your thoughts. I'm Rachel King, bringing not just my opinions to the mic, but about the courtroom too. Your part, keep listening, keep engaging, and until next time, let's keep those gavels down and our voices up. Unmistakably up.